Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Scotch, the show of marine biology, grooviness, Richie Blackmore, and so much more. With today's guest, the second of two conversations commemorating Arbeg Day, June 1st, 2019, the global ambassador for Glenmorangie and Ardbeg himself, Mr. David Blackmore. We sat down at 7 Grand last year, right before celebrating Ardbeg Day for the release of Grooves, and today and tomorrow we get to hang out more and sip the new release Drum from Ardbeg, 46% ABV, non-chill filtered. It is Ardbeg in all of its smoky gloriness and rested in rum casks. David, even in this interview, kind of alludes to it being released this year, so it's a nice continuum. It is a beautifully rich Ardbeg. I have not had the standard release yet, but it's a celebration to music, festivities, and some of the carnival-like elements of Isla's Music Festival. So, I hope to see you guys at Ardbeg Day's celebration tomorrow, but without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this great chat with David Blackmore.
How's the body hanging in there? Actually, it's a good question. In the last 3 months, I've been on a real health kick, and the body's doing pretty well right now. I'm just over 30 pounds down this year.
What did you do to kind of approach that?
I to be honest, I pulled back on the booze a bit.
Yeah.
I started hitting the spin class.
Cool.
A lot. 5 spin classes a week.
Holy shit, are you kidding me?
5:15 a.m. I'd go before flights, stuff like that. Finding out where the nearest spin class is to the hotels I'm staying at. Trying to find hotels that have even one spin bike, stuff like that.
Building a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Do you see that now you've incorporated this into your lifestyle? That's
I love
something you're going to do?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I've had all sorts of injuries from playing rugby back in the day, and tore my ACL when I was about 18. So I can't jog. It's just my knee just won't take.
So low impact.
So low impact, and I wish I'd discovered spinning, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Back in January when I first did it, I got a runner's high for the first time in 20 years.
This doesn't feel like alcohol. This is a different kind of high.
This is wonderful. Yeah. So the body's holding up okay. I don't want to tempt fate. But people always tell me, brand ambassadorship is a young man's job. Do
you believe that?
I think as long as it's something that you're still passionate about, It doesn't feel like a job at all.
Yeah.
And it is about having a balance. I've seen plenty of ambassadors lose that balance.
Sure.
We are talking about alcohol, and it's important to always remember to drink it in moderation, and realize that there are issues related to alcohol that you've got to be very careful with. But it doesn't mean that something as boutique and high end as a single malt, it's not something you should be drinking huge quantities of anyway.
Keep it at its distance. Enjoy it, right?
It's
Observe
less
it.
and drink less and better.
I like that. Less and better.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of feel that way about romance, David. Higher caliber, right? But just fewer of them.
There you go.
Makes it a little more meaningful to me. Another thing I found interesting, because there's some bank backgrounds or some event planning background for you, right?
Yeah.
But studying at St. Andrews, studying marine biology.
Yeah.
Now, where does this come from the family? This interest in nature, this interest in animals.
It's really the family background was an interest in science. My dad was a postdoctoral research fellow at Cornell back in the 60s in chemistry. So the chemistry kind of thing and the science background was always there. But, my family have always been pretty outdoorsy as well. So a lot of mountaineering. Another thing I did before I even got into whiskey was I got myself qualified as a Scottish mountain guide, mountain leader. Did a lot of mountaineering, hiking.
That's amazing.
So I've had this love of the outdoors, and a marine biology degree was taking the science and the outdoors thing as a natural thing. But then graduating St Andrews, thinking, I've got a degree from St Andrews, I'll be able to get a job anywhere, and discovering that a marine biology job gets you a job nowhere. Basically, it's tough.
So, nature's a beautiful thing, whether it is the mountains or animals themselves, right?
Yeah.
I was in Key West recently.
Yeah.
And we heard there would be manatees. Okay. Yeah. We found secretly a manatee that was on a boat. It saw us and it ran off. Well, literally it swam off, right?
Uh-huh.
But this magnificent element of these large beasts of the ocean, was that something too for you, that like this connection with animals?
Yeah, I mean, my degree involved studying grey seals out in the North Sea. So we were out on ribs, on rigid inflatable speedboats, bouncing around, literally with massive butterfly nets, jumping off the front of the boat, low tide out onto sand spits, and trying to capture these male grey seals, which are the largest natural indigenous carnivore in the British Isles. They have canines, kind of like lions have.
How did they feel about you trying?
They didn't like it much, and they're pretty aggressive, and they're still they're unbelievably fast on ground for an animal without legs. Let's just put it that way. You've got to watch yourself. One of my tutors actually had a chunk taken out of his leg a few years back, and that was through a dry suit with jeans and everything else and all the other layers on, and he took a chunk out of his calf. So you got to be really careful. No, it was all good fun, and the real thing it's given me is, as well as a kind of understanding of the natural processes of whiskey, it's the science background, being able to readily understand the distilling and germination process, and be able to just about hold my own when in a room with Dr. Lumsden and the actual whiskey creators day in, day out.
Well, it helps that you
what's going on.
Wearing glasses helps.
Yes, it makes you look a lot more intelligent. It's true.
It's like a handicap in golf. We just gain. I mean, I'm not wearing glasses now, but I typically do 2 strokes at least.
There you go. I actually don't need glasses. These are just stage. No, that's a joke.
Wait, you know what? There's no lenses in there.
No, I am genuinely blind as a bat. So
well, we have more in common than I ever thought.
There you go. I didn't used to be until my mid to late 20s. I apparently had perfect fighter pilot vision, and things went downhill fast. Around about the same time as I discovered whiskey, but there we go.
I think I got more attractive when I discovered Scotch. I think that's what happened. It got taller. Thinner,
well, exactly. Right? I mean, you certainly whiskey has that effect on yourself.
It does. Sorry, I'm reminiscing right here. This is a beautiful moment. So your dad working, or rather studying at Cornell in the 60s, did he have any exposure to Scotch? This piece of heritage from back home?
Not really. He was out here in the States for a little over a year, and then moved back to the UK, actually to the south of England, to Bristol University, mainly because his and I know these same issues. His visa, his student work visa was over, and that was it. So he had to move back. But my dad was not ever really a Scotch whiskey guy at all. My dad, though, really was into wine. French, Italian, red wine particularly. And growing up, I certainly was encouraged to be interested in his collection, and dare I say, maybe have a little sip here or there. And I remember actually helping him dig out an old coal cellar that we had in a house we lived in, so that he could then dig out all the old coal, and we whitewashed it and we made it into a wine cellar.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's been quite a privilege of mine since I was the guy that got into Scotch, that kind of bring it full circle and enthuse my dad into single malt. And
it's kind of nice. You're bringing something back, because
absolutely
paying for that expensive tuition, right?
Exactly right.
I gotta bring something back to the table.
Nobody's asked me. You haven't asked me yet. You say, "Oh, you went to St Andrews. You must know Prince William." I'm much older than that. So.
But not much older.
Well, no. I think I graduated, and there was maybe 1 or 2 years between me finishing and William starting at St Andrews. But,
well, I hear that one of the most influential moments is your introduction to Scotch. As you said, you're a wine guy, I think up until when you're 23, 25, just kind of early 20s, right? What was the moment where you said, okay, maybe I will explore this a little bit?
Yeah, it was really down to my boss at the time, a Canadian gentleman, and we ran a small boutique events management company in Scotland, and we took the corporate groups that were already booked to come to Scotland for their annual general meetings or whatever, and if they were bringing significant others, there would be kind of partner programs to castles and golfing and all that, and usually they would want at some point a tutored whiskey tasting. So I really did not like Scotch whiskey up until that point, and my Canadian boss told me how wrong I was, and I still didn't believe him, but he encouraged me to be sitting in the back of tutored tastings when people that I hired, who ended up basically like being like I am now, ambassadors, would give these seminars. And I kind of started getting a real appreciation, at least, for how it was made. And then one day, I remember the day in the office, he said, "You've really got to get a handle with this. I can't believe you still don't really like this. Try this." And there was a couple of glasses of single malt that he poured. And I thought, well, you know what? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, maybe there's something in that. So then I joined the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, which is a very... a great private members club based out of Edinburgh in Scotland. Yeah. And it's not that expensive to join. It's pretty egalitarian. It's just, all walks of life. If you're into whiskey, you're welcome. And it's single cask bottlings. So I joined them, and then that company folded for one reason. It was actually 9/11 happened, and after 9/11, nobody wanted to party for obvious reasons. Corporate groups weren't coming to Scotland, and we didn't have any business. So we went out of business by Christmas of that year. So I found myself then getting a bar job at the club I was a member of just to pay the bills. And in fact, I wasn't good enough and didn't know anything about whiskey. So they really didn't let me on the bar unsupervised. I did a few shifts here or there. But my first job in the global whiskey industry was as pot washer in their kitchens. For a summer. So what did you
learn from such an experience?
I learned that chefs are crazy. That's the first thing. Scary, terrifying, wonderful, creative human beings. But
erratic, insane. All these things.
Yes, all those things. Very unpredictable. I learned that working behind a bar and working in a kitchen is exponentially harder work than anybody who hasn't done it before would ever realize. It's hard on your feet, it's hard on your back, you're exhausted at the end of it, and God knows you're not paid enough in those roles. So it's given me a real respect for people that are committed, brilliant bartenders and committed, brilliant chefs, and the bus boys and everybody that works in the back of house. It's not easy. It's not an easy job, and nobody ever thanks the back of house ever. So I think that's an important thing that the liquor industry needs to keep in mind, actually, is the respect for the people that do the real hard work.
Yeah. And, sometimes even just moving barrels around. Thankless job, dude.
Oh, God, yeah. It looks so romantic. And I go back to Scotland and roll one or two every now and then.
I'm good,
and
thanks.
I'm like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Yes, thanks very much. I like rolling the empty ones.
Very easy in comparison.
Exactly.
This culture of Scotch at that time. There's interpretations that we have, as young kids or growing up in it and being Edinburgh. Obviously, it's like one of the epicenters of Scotch, right? Scotch culture. But what's the interpretation of? Is it a cool thing? Is it?
Certainly. When I was first getting into Scotch whiskey, most of my friends, and sort of peer group looked at me quizzically like, what on earth is he getting into? Everybody else was drinking, white rum and Coke, and it was that kind of and cheap beer. And I'd love to say that I was somehow influential in it becoming cool, but I think there's a much bigger movement out there, and there were a lot of people like myself at that time tired of the same old thing and wanting to get back to when they were out drinking, a drinking experience that was a bit more credible, that didn't have so much marketing gloss, to put it politely, around it, and something that you felt like you were being told the truth about, and it was a really well-made, credible product. And Scotch whiskey, regardless of brand, across the whole category, Scotch whiskey is that. And that's what really excited me about it as well. And hopefully plenty of other people who are kind of sick and tired of the world of just being bombarded with marketing and advertising all the time. Wanted something that, we're still marketing and advertising, but something a little bit more truthful and credible.
Allow someone to discover, too, right?
Yeah.
As someone that has to be very integrated with social and jump around here, of course, great Instagram profile, you've got the Facebook thing, Twitter, all of this.
Yeah.
What's your approach to try to bring people into your life, into the brand, without beating them over the head, right?
If I'm truthful, the Instagram thing is relatively new for me, and I'm getting my head around it somewhat. Really, I've taken the approach that I need to be personally still enthusiastic and excited every day about what about the category, about the brands I represent, and if I can communicate that with enough passion, that's it. That's all I need to. Well, not all, but that's largely the job done, and that will rub off on other people. And it doesn't need to get much more complicated than that. Be passionate about what you do, love what you do, and it will show. Yeah, and other people will be enthused as well.
As long as it's honest, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of those things.
There are plenty of things I don't know about Scotch whiskey. God knows, And when someone stumps me with a question, I won't try. I'll never try and fake the answer. I'll say, well, it's a good question. I don't honestly know. My best guess would be this. If you really want to know, give me 24 hours. I'll get back to you.
It's a great position to be in, though.
Got to do it. There's no point.
Working back at house, kind of skipping back to the hospitality thing, did you find you had a predilection towards people, conversations, being charming, being a maitre d'?
Yes. I certainly didn't like the more kind of just back of house stuff. I wanted to be out front of house, talking to people, and even then I prefer the one-on-one approach. So another reason why, as much as I admire bartenders, I don't think I could do it every day of my life. Partly the rugby injuries were just too painful to stand on my feet that long. But the other side of it is I like to have the sort of more in-depth conversation one-on-one. So I'd make the world's worst bartender. I'd be talking to two people at the bar all night, and no one else would get a drink.
Back,
So there'd be a room full of angry people and two really happy people.
Mates for life, though.
Yes,
of course.
Exactly.
This passion, then, with the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. I had to memorize this because it's like SMS, but there's a W in there. So
SMWS, yes. Scotch Malt Whiskey Society.
This was it. This was the gateway into the larger culture.
This was it for me because I had to rapidly learn little details, a little bit more about over 100 distilleries. That's what they were representing. That's what I was representing, and I started doing seminars and tutored tastings, and it would be different each time. So you had to learn pretty fast. Luckily for me, the history of the Scottish Malt Whisky Society it's not owned by the Glenmorangie company now, but for several years it was purchased. Oh. And so de facto I became a Glenmorangie company employee, but still working under the Scottish Malt Whisky Society umbrella. And it was around about that time that I went to Whisky Live in London, my first whisky festival. And I had heard about Dr. Bill Lumsden, and I really wanted to meet him. And I knew he'd be busy. I knew this would be my one chance. Right. But I knew he'd be really busy at the festival. So I just turned up a bit early to his seminar and offered to help put the tasting mats out and pour glasses and stuff like that. Yeah. And just got chatting to him, got his business card, and that was the biggest mistake he ever made. Because at that point, I then called him one week and emailed him the next for well over a year. Just simply with the same thing. Hi, it's me. I'd like a job as an ambassador, please.
Persistent.
Very persistent.
A year?
Annoyingly so.
So I felt the same way. It's like, I've got to bug David to show up to this interview with me.
Yeah.
But now you appreciate this, right? You got to do this thing.
Totally.
But at some point it resonated with him or hiring or HR. How did that?
What's that?
How did the kind of opportunity surface?
There was already a fledgling program in the States with a couple of regional ambassadors, and one of those ambassadors was headhunted to another brand. Oh. So an opening happened in the US, and I think Bill thought, right, this guy, he's persistent. He might be quite good as well, but he's persistent. So we'll give him a job, but let's get him as far away from me as we can, basically.
I mean, it's flattering in a way, right? Yeah. He knows who I am. That's for sure.
And I'm not even kidding. When I landed in the US on the 16th of September 2005, I had a one-way ticket. That was it. They bought me a one-way ticket.
They take your IDs. Yeah. And they take your wallet and like, just go.
2 suitcases and a one-way ticket. And a month in a Hilton Homewood Suites in New Jersey.
Oh, beautiful.
To find my feet. Yeah, that was it.
At what point did that relationship turn beautiful, serendipitous? You now cohorts with the Dr. Ben.
I wouldn't necessarily call myself cohorts. He's clearly, and by some margin, the boss, the whiskey maker. But I count him as my friend and, of course, colleague. And I'm very privileged to have him allow me from time to time into his world and into his sensory lab, learn from him, work with him, and from time to time maybe I give him a few good ideas. I would never ever call myself a whiskey maker. There's a couple of good ideas I've given him that he's then got run with, but he makes the whiskey. I've just come up with a few wacky ideas, most of them not good, a few of them good.
Does he make you clean the distillery if it's a bad idea?
No, it's just I wouldn't mind cleaning the distillery. It would be actually don't publish that, but they'll make me do it now. Damn.
You will get what you ask for too.
Yes,
apparently,
exactly.
Given the persistence. Well, and we won't talk about the details because you didn't tell me, but maybe some creative input on the Ardbeg release for next year?
I wouldn't so much put creative input, no more than I did get to sample a little taste back in January of this year of the prototype Ardbeg Day 2019.
Oh, that's
You're not going to get any more out of me.
No, I wouldn't.
I don't see any
dare.
thumb screws around here, so we're okay. But my creative input on that one was as simple as Bill said, "What do you think of it?" And I said, "That's bleep good."
Yeah. Still counts.
So there we go. It doesn't count. Oh damn.
That's like a thumbs up. You're on the panel, right?
Yeah. It was very impressive stuff for next year too.
Carrying the weight as the global ambassador for these two. I kept trying to think.
Carrying the weight. That's a nice way of putting it. Thanks.
Yeah.
30 pounds down. Just remember, 30 pounds down.
Now you're gonna have to drink more Ardbeg. It's got to even out somehow, whether it's little or not. But you have this brilliant lightness with Glenmorangie, and you have this deep, dark, brooding, pensive nature, this beast, Ardbeg. Is it Stones and Beatles? I was trying to think, what is the two pieces of this thing? Because if the Beatles, light effervescence, makes you love Glenmorangie, probably get you a couple more kids if you drink it right. But then Ardbeg's a little more gritty, a little more rock and roll.
Stones and Beatles.
I bet you've got a better one for me.
Stones and Metallica.
Ooh, there you go. There you go. Like a little bit of a wider.
Who knows? No, Stones and Stones and Beatles. Yeah, probably about right. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. What I like about you've got me thinking. Sorry, you got me thinking about that.
How dare I?
I know. How dare you? I think. There's a time and a place for both Glenmorangie and Ardbeg, and that's one of the things that keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
In my venerable 43rd, coming up in my 44th year, I guess.
Yeah.
Whiskey's about mood. It's about if you ask me what my favorite the groove. If you ask me what my favorite whiskey is, I'll probably give you a different answer every hour of every day because place, mood, who you're with. But there's a few consistents, and if I had to choose out of everything that the Glenmorangie company has, if I had to choose my last bottle of whiskey, it might surprise you. It'd actually be Glenmorangie 18-year-old.
Me too. Think. Oh, yeah.
Because I'm always in the mood for it. But having said that, Ardbeg, when you're in the mood for Ardbeg, it's much more kind of hit or miss. You're either violently in the mood or violently not in the mood for Ardbeg.
Right.
But when you're in the mood for it,
deeply passionate.
Nothing else will do. Yeah. Nothing else will do.
It's a fix.
It's pretty. I wouldn't quite put it like that, but it's almost a religious experience with Ardbeg, and I'm the guy with the Ardbeg license plate on my car.
Are you kidding
I'm
me?
The guy whose daughter's middle name is Isla. Only because
quite a good name.
Yeah, my wife wouldn't let me call her Ardbeg, so it's
they call her Beg for short. That's a terrible name.
Terrible name for a. You don't want to do that. But yeah, it's and the analogy between the Beatles and the Stones. I'm trying to think.
I've got that brain turning.
I guess if I had to say between the Beatles and Stones, if I was only allowed to listen to one ever again, probably go Beatles personally.
Well, because you're right.
I think
that's the right answer.
Is it the right answer? Good.
Luckily, we can keep moving forward.
There's people screaming. There's people screaming at their whatever they're listening to right now.
At least the Beatles called it. They still looked good when they quit. The Stones are melting on stage. It's not fun to watch anymore.
That is true.
Shenanigans. It really is.
Exactly.
So this education piece, which is an extension, I mean, you have some of the most prime tuned players in your collection. The Glenmorangie, La Santa, Quinta Rubin, 18, Astar, all this great stuff. And the Corey Vrecken.
Yeah.
Dark Cove, man, that's a secret favorite.
Dark Cove. Kelpie.
Oh, which we're sipping now,
which is
too.
what we have in front of us, and that was my choice, very selfishly. Last year's private edition, Kelpie, meaning a mythical sea beast, Scottish sea beast, and I know that's kind of.
Did you have anything to do with naming that?
No, I had nothing to do with the name.
Because earlier it sounded like you were trying to capture some sea beasts.
Really?
With the seals, I'm just saying.
Oh yeah.
It comes full circle.
Yeah,
there are so many marine kind of things.
Nothing to do with me. It was more to do with the fact that we Kelpie's using these, or at least partially using this oak from the Black Sea area of former Soviet Republic of Georgia, and. I guess they were just trying to come up with some sort of more maritime link, without going the obvious kind of, sort of Soviet Union-esque sort of steampunk thing, which could have been fun, but Kelpie's more Scottish, more rooted in Scotland. So.
Yeah, and the artwork's always good. I like that there's a cheeky element to the bottles too. There's the serious core line, but then you guys kind of go into some folklore and stuff.
Ardbeg, I mean, there's so many stories to be told still from Islay. It's just an amazing place. If you haven't been, you've got to go. And Ardbeg, we always say we take the process of making our whiskey very, very seriously.
Yeah.
But we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I think that's the absolute right position to be in. Islay is a pretty unusual, quirky, oddball place.
Yeah.
And Ardbeg personifies that better than any other distillery on Islay. We're also a bit oddball. You think you've just understood us and predicted what we're going to do next, and then we come out with grooves, and flower power.
Well, the funny thing is I never thought about this before, but if you get drunk enough, if you say oddball, it comes out Ardbeg.
Does it really? There you go. Yes, I guess it probably does. We're not going to test that theory on the air, though, are we?
I think it's one of those theories, the hypotheses we'll have to prove over time.
Yes.
It takes lots of research and statistical viability to make sure.
Absolutely. And another thing that we have talked about over the years is that an anagram of Ardbeg is badger.
Really?
So we had discussed just doing an anagram label sometime, but I think
that would be great.
I think that bit the dust, sadly.
Oh, come on. A badger?
It'd be cool. We're just going to do a black and white striped label.
Perfect.
It'd be brilliant.
Add some, maybe that's the Tabasco barrel one.
Who knows? Yeah. Can't do Tabasco. Scottish Whisky Association would never allow that in the month of Sundays.
But, well, it's still fun to think about how we can. It would
be fun to think about it. I guess you could try it at home. Buy it. Go rush out now and buy lots of Ardbeg and a used Tabasco barrel. Try it yourself.
I'm really into that idea. Are we taking notes here? Because this is something we gotta. It's a deliverable from this meeting, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
But today, of all days, you're in Austin, Texas, which is brilliant. But it's hot as fuck outside, which is fine.
125,000 degrees outside today.
Fine.
Yes.
But the fact we get to sit in here and sip Kelpie is one thing. But Arbeg, June 2nd.
Yeah.
All right.
June 2nd.
We're gonna get groovy, and I know it's kind of lame or whatever, but I love the 60s. I love a lot of music out of the 60s.
Yeah.
All right, so today for Ardbeg Day in Austin, Texas, what is your groove? What were you listening to?
What was I listening to?
Yep. What's setting the tone here musically
for us?
That's
a great question. I can't even think what I was listening to.
Were you listening to something?
I was, To be honest, I was driving down here from Dallas, and I was probably listening to whatever my kids insisted had to be on the radio. It's sad, but that's we
the
soccer
get older.
Dad.
A spin cycling soccer dad.
It wasn't. Spin cycling soccer dad. Don't. Life is over as I know it. I'm still clinging to my bottle of Ardbeg coolness right there.
No one will doubt your coolness, especially tonight with this class.
So what would I listen to though? I guess,
what would you listen to?
What are we going to listen to tonight? What should we demand they play? Well, how about this? Am I in the right era? Is that 70s or 60s? I'm already thinking about Blackmore's Night, Richie Blackmore.
I knew you were going to say that. Deep Purple, man.
Deep Purple.
Yes. That's brilliant. That's probably late 60s, early 70s. But I don't care. I think the term groovy we still say.
Yeah, I think that counts.
That totally counts.
There you go. So,
that's
and
great.
people ask all the time, am I related? And I'm like, if Richie Blackmore was my uncle, I'd be loaded.
You would be a roadie somewhere.
I'd be a just fun baby somewhere. Sadly, he's not any direct relation.
Could be the best myth we ever kind of promulgate,
we should do that. Absolutely.
I met Richie Blackmore's cousin. Or is it? No, it's a nephew. It would be a nephew.
Yeah, nephew. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll work on it. I've got a
Reminds me of the first time I ever came to the US with my best buddy Phil. Phil's from Orkney. And it took me a few years when I first met him at St Andrews to understand a word he said. Because Orcadians sound like a cross between a Welshman and someone from the depths of India. Their accent is so intense. It's not like any Scottish accent you've ever heard. Anyway, we got on like a house on fire straight away. We came over to the States one time for a week, and we decided it was a great idea to pretend that we were British nobility. And that would really help our success chatting up the girls
at
bars in New York. So we thought, what would our names be, our titles be? So I was the Earl of Marchmont, which is a pub in Edinburgh. This is perfect.
And it's not a lie. You probably were there quite often, right?
We sat in the Earl of Marchmont thinking about it, and then we went, I know, I'm the Earl of Marchmont. And for some reason, he was the Duke of Buccleuch. I have no idea. But it was brilliant. It didn't actually work at all. We were still
It doesn't work?
Completely success.
So we're here with my friend Matthew, but he's got this just charming British accent. I can't fight women off of him when we go.
Well, wow! Lucky him.
He's like 6'1". He's got.
There you go. I think his hair is just a little bit redder than mine, even, and the girls just can't resist it. That's what it is.
It must be passion. Not old age, not genetics, pure passion.
Now I'm interested. I'm going to ask you a question because
I didn't. This didn't clear my PR guy.
Yeah, sorry about that. People are always very vocal to me. That when they've tried the committee version of each Ardbeg Day release and then the regular black label, which one they prefer. And just human nature, I guess, most times people insist they prefer the committee release. But I'm interested to see what your thoughts are between the two.
So I have not had the privilege of trying the committee.
Wow.
Well, but I know there's a bottle in the house.
We're going to change that today. Okay.
But it's somewhere north of 51%, right?
It's higher strength. Other than that, it's exactly the same liquid.
Yeah.
Last year's release, Kelpie, I actually preferred the reduced strength one more.
Yeah.
And people say, well, then you should still buy the committee bottling, and it allows you to reduce it, I guess.
Yeah.
But as the perfected art of the whiskey creator, as kind of viewed straight out the bottle and tasted, the black label Kelpie for me was a better artwork.
I think so. It's the same. We had Dan was here recently doing a class on the whole line. And you mentioned Corey Vreckender. That's a beast. That's an unbridled slayer kind of beast, right?
Yeah.
But for me, Ugadal is high proof, but the way it's supposed to be from the man who created it, from what I understand. And so that even at that higher proof, it just makes sense. The same with Ano. It's beautiful at the price.
Fascinating because it is so high in strength, but most people don't realize
That's right, yeah.
How do you do that? How do you make a whiskey? How do you such a talented whiskey creator that you make a whiskey that's incredibly smoky, a massive sherry bomb,
right,
at ridiculously high proof, but it kind of goes down easy. It's smooth and kind of relatively easy drinking. That's some
talent.
That's some magic going on.
It is. It is the visceral experience. It's like feeling it all. It's like being on a very never mind. But you feel it's got everything going on.
The best place in the world to drink Ugadal is to take a bottle of Ugadal in your backpack. Start off at Ardbeg Distillery, hike up the hill behind to Loch Earnan Beast, the intermediary loch on our water source up in the hill, and just sit up there on the banks of that loch. It's not a long walk, and just pour a glass of Ugadal. It doesn't taste any better than there. Amazing.
For those that you can't see, my jaw's dropped. That sounds spectacular.
And then very specifically, I would take the Corrie Vrecken out on sometimes we take a fishing boat or something out off the old pier. Corrie Vrecken's the one to have when you're getting the sea spray splashing over the front of the boat into your face. Bottle of Corrie Vrecken.
Which is the seal capturing label?
Corrie Vrecken.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fair.
Seal capturing is definitely Corrie Vrecken.
Now, I know not everybody captures seals that listen to the show.
We were looking after them. It's okay. We weren't capturing them.
You were embracing them, taking care of them. Right?
We were satellite tagging them to monitor them so we could help their populations. We weren't making handbags out of them or eating them or anything. Don't worry.
A little fist fight here and there, but it was all good. Mutual understanding.
Marine environmental biology study.
So this evening, we get to toast with you. We're surrounded by this amazing, groovy paraphernalia. I think there will be some LSD. That's I'm sorry. I misunderstood. It was the Scotch. It's just a disco ball up there. That's what it is.
That's a disco ball.
These visual hallucinations. It's just a disco ball. Sorry. From what I read, I had some statistics earlier. Many babies are conceived on Ardbeg Day. It is such a lovely, romantic day.
My gosh.
For some reason, spikes in births 9 months from now. I never could draw a correlation, but now I get it.
Yes. I think you better check your facts somewhat on that. The scary thing is...
Well, no, I'm American, right? I don't have to do that.
It's no. Facts? What facts?
I'll tweet about it. It's true, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm going to be on the toilet when I do it. You know what?
Facts.
There we go. All facts. Okay, 2 questions left for you before we kick off this magnanimous, beautiful event here Saturday at 7 Grands. So one, I think about all these whiskeys, right? And just take yourself to whatever bar you want to go to in the world. And it doesn't matter what dram you're drinking, but you could have a few drams, a conversation with anybody living or deceased. Who would you love to just sit, dive into their mind, and drink with?
Am I allowed to choose more than one person, or how?
You can do however you like.
Straight off the top of my head, the people that I'd like to sit down with now that I'm I've grown up a bit.
Yeah.
I'd love to sit down with my grandparents.
Were they from Edinburgh?
No, my grandparents are largely from the southwest of England, actually.
No,
my mother's side is Scots. My dad's side are pretty much full-on English. Shock horror. Yeah, with my grandparents, they just all had such incredible life stories. And whilst I didn't lose them that long ago, I didn't really take the time to sit and really listen to them and write down their stories. My grandmother on my mother's side was born in Shanghai in about 1910 or something like that. My great-grandfather, her father, was the deputy chief of police in Shanghai in the British concession. And
again,
so just amazing stories that I know little pieces of, but I really wish I had done a proper job of sitting down and doing what you're doing here, is taking some recording equipment and getting it down, which I didn't. So I've lost a lot of it. In terms of a kind of celebrity world figure, the obvious sort of cliches would be something like Churchill. But beyond that, if I really had to choose one person to sit down and talk to, living, it might be somebody like Bill Gates, I think. Dead, I might go for Mozart.
Oh, shit.
I wouldn't mind a night out with Mozart, because he was a bit of a partier and his genius, and that would be a top choice for me.
So 13 years in this gig, your father too. What does the next chapter look like? A book, perhaps.
So I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. I would like to maybe move into a bit more of a kind of overseeing job, directing the educational activities of the company as we move, and hopefully make things a little bit more professional without losing the heart and soul of it. As the brands get bigger, hiring some more ambassadors, and maybe my role directing that.
Yeah. Education of the education.
Yeah.
The housemaster, in a sense.
Housemaster.
That guy that's in Animal House, they're like, he keeps them on a tight leash. Absolutely.
Indeed.
Well, we've got plenty of whiskey still left to drink this evening.
We do.
Ardbeg Day. Dude, I'm here in Ardbeg Day.
Crazy, right?
With Richie Blackmore's nephew.
You heard it here first.
I am a lucky duck, aren't I?
Indeed.
Can't wait to see this tasting. I can't wait to be there and hang out some more.
Yeah, I'm going to be playing guitar later.
No shit.
Yeah, no, not really.
Oh. I'll bring it. We'll get you a guitar. You're connected to the Austin music scene now. You wanted some drums?
Amazing, right?
Tambourine in his car?
Tambourine.
Oh, sure.
Could you have what's it called? A wazoo?
Oh, kazoo.
Kazoo, yeah, kazoo. That's about there. Although I did do a year's bagpipe classes at school.
Oh my gosh.
I was very lazy and lacking in talent. But there we go.
Well, you found your... Obviously, educating, being out in front of it, you found your talent. David,
true.
Very excited. You're in Austin. Excited to spend the rest of the evening.
Yeah.
Brilliant chat.
Cheers,
Thanks
man.
so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So there we have it, Mr. David Blackmore, the global ambassador for Glenmorangie and Ardbeg. He is in town, Austin, Texas, tomorrow, June 1st, 2019 at 7 Grand to celebrate the release of Drum, a Caribbean-inspired Ardbeg. I've had the higher proof community version, and it is just lovely. Cannot wait to taste the 46% ABV version tomorrow. David, thanks so much for chatting with me. We had a really great time at the event, and it was a very important day for me. For those of you who know me, life is an interesting thing, and Ardbeg Day now will forever be, in a sense, an anniversary for me. So it's a great event, and I cannot wait to see everybody tomorrow. So thanks, everybody, for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter how many rums you've been drinking lately, because there's all this Caribbean air going around, or if you're thinking, I really would like a trip to Jamaica, please keep dancing.